Alright, are we back on? Apologies, it's been a good while since I operated anything analog, but hopefully I can use this to broadcast my findings or reports. It's gonna be one crazy weirdo like me who still hasn't converted to digital. I digress. I'm just gonna go on the assumption that I am indeed broadcasting, so let's begin. Der Grossman, Virduv, Tekken Man, or is now known, the Slender Man, has been recorded in human history for centuries now. Some of the earliest alleged accounts of Slender Man can be found in ancient hieroglyphic carvings. Its first appearance in modern history was around the 16th century in Germanic wood carvings. The being's history with the German population at the time is extensive to say the least, being known as some sort of fae or spirit that takes children to make them one with the trees of the infamous Black Forest. Stories of this entity are often told as bedtime fairy tales or nursery rhymes to scare children into not going into the forest and to listen to their parents. One poem, Zweikönig, tells the tale of a young boy named Peter who helped his mother gather branches for her to cook, but one day found a branch that looked like an arm. After picking up the branch, he got an idea to pull a prank on his mother. He stuck the branch into the window frame to make it look like it was clawing at the window to scare his mother. After setting up the branch and walking back into the house, he found out that the branch was no longer there. So, the young boy went out in the dark of the night to find the branch, thinking it just fell over. However, the branch was nowhere near the window. It was in fact on the floor in front of the forest. When Peter went to grab the branch, it grabbed back and dragged poor Peter into the forest with him screaming and crying into the night. His poor mother heard the screams and ran out to find him, only to find that the Zweikönig, dressed in black and taller than any man, had lifted Peter higher than all the trees with his thin, branch-like arms. And before the mother could react, Peter was carried deep into the forest, with screams mixing with a howling wind. When the sun rose the next day, a group of hunters were searching in the forest for Peter, only to find his remains among the trees, and his head being grasped by a single claw-like branch. Jeffrey Woods, born, well, let's just say a while ago. Growing up, Jeff had a fairly standard childhood. Decent parents, a little brother, and a lackluster performance at school. However, in his teens, Jeff developed a rare degenerative brain disorder called fatal familial insomnia. As the name suggests, it's a disorder that caused poor Jeff to have terrible insomnia, never being able to sleep without medication. However, soon his condition deteriorated to where even the most potent sedatives could not allow him to sleep. He could never sleep again. This, of course, caused Jeff to grow disturbed. One night, his mother found him trying to cut off his own eyelids in apparent fugue state. His family could not care for him at home, so they sent him to a medical facility. This barely helped Jeff. Alongside the now year without sleep, some of the other patients would only bring down his mental state. 3 patients in particular took immense joy from bullying Jeff. This escalated till one day they locked Jeff in a closet filled with cleaning supplies, and when Jeff lit a light to see how he could get out, God knows how he found one, he slipped into a shelf filled with God knows what chemicals. The next thing anyone sees is Jeff running around completely on fire, brutalizing the 3 bullies, mangling their faces like Play-Doh with his bare hands while screaming like, someone on fire. The staff tried to sedate Jeff to get him to stop, but of course that didn't work. So, after extinguishing him, they managed to wrangle him into a straitjacket and carted him off to intensive care. What the doctors found he had suffered was horrifying. His eyelids were completely burned away, his skin looked like charcoal, and he had to endure constant searing pain and wear bandages for the rest of his life. The next thing they discovered is that his mind had completely shattered. At that point, from the years of not sleeping, the bullying, and now the constant pain, Jeff, on that day, became an animal. What happened after that night is not 100% clear. What is obvious, however, is that over 250 staff and patients were slaughtered that night, and the mental hospital burnt to the ground. Jeff's current MO is extensive and convoluted. He'll often pick a target at random, with seemingly no reason, gender, age, sexuality, it doesn't really matter to him. When he has picked the victim, he'll begin stalking them, often for days or weeks on end, learning their schedule from afar. How he manages to do this while not being noticed as a man wearing a blood and dirt-stained white jacket with bandages covering his face is beyond me. When the time is right for him, often when the victim is away from the house, he'll break in and hide, with no trace of a break-in being present. There he will often hide in closets, under beds, or in attics, or basements, then wait and observe. This can go on for weeks, or even months. When he gets bored, he'll often sneak into the victim's bedroom at night, when they're sleeping, and stand next to their bed staring at them. Sometimes, he'll get up to their faces, the stench of his wounds and years of unwashed clothing often waking them up. So, if you ever wake up in the middle of the night and have a feeling that someone is in the room with you, do not get up. Because if you do, you are sure as hell going back to sleep, one way or the other. For hundreds of years, black dogs have been omens of death, and even said to be the very hounds of the devil itself, stealing lost souls and dragging them to the deepest pit of hell. There have been many famous cases of these hellhounds, mainly around the British Isles, such as the Black Shulker of East Anglia, Barghest of Yorkshire, Dando's dogs, and even, in the ancient Greek times, black dogs were said to be able to foresee evil and death. However, as time goes on, people and culture change and evolve. Ghost stories of the past are soon only remembered as mere folk tales and superstition. Tales of these canines are often left as legends and nothing more. However, as technology evolved, so have these spiritual predators. As the internet began to form and entered the common consciousness started to enter into the internet. All the human history, feelings and thoughts began to slowly be steamed into the digital web, and so do their stories and legends. Tales of old were given new life within the pages of historians and enthusiasts alike. And so did the fear those stories caused. Entities began emerging from the digital primordial soup. Spirits and creatures of binary code. Most not friendly. Smile.jpg, or the Smile Dog, is a digital reincarnation of these hounds of death. The demon takes the form of an image file. Not the dog in a picture, but the very file itself is a manifestation of the entity. We don't know exactly when it first emerged, but our best estimates point around 98 to 2000. It first appeared as a chainmail message, an email with a picture attached to it. According to eyewitness testimonies at the time, the picture was very different. The dog was less demented. It may have been a normal picture of the dog, and seemingly had no mental effects on the viewer. We think that this was a ploy by the entity to lure people into viewing the next version of the picture. The next wave of chainmails that was sent to the exact same group of people had a heavily distorted and altered version of the first picture, and here is when the mental effects of the entity begin to occur. The Smile Dog is able to enter the dreams of people who view the image, a mimetic disease, and morph them into horrid nightmares, but a viewer and their families are tortured and maimed while the dog just stares at them. He will continue doing this until the victim relives their suffering, or if they do what it asks, and that is to spread the word and spread his form across the web. With sightings dating back to the 1600s and up to the modern day, this entity is often confused with other similar creatures, like the chupacabra or the Dover demon. But this thing is a whole other beast. The rake is a humanoid creature that prefers not to interact with humans, often residing in forests of North and Central America. The rake is surprisingly shy, even staying clear of known hunting routes and hiking trails. However, do not be mistaken. It will enter rural houses and villages to feed. This predator is innately familiar with human behaviour and is frighteningly intelligent. It'll often hide in blind spots or silently crawl out of vision in tight places like hallways. Its appearance is to be noted. It is oddly humanoid. Its hollow blank eyes and candid proportions seems to cause a visceral reaction to those who see it. A deep sense of fear and dread. It is believed that a rake and similar creatures were once more common in our prehistoric past, and due to the predation of our kind, we have adapted to recognize when something seems almost human. The rake is classified as a primal hunter, a being that used to stalk and hunt humans when we were just mere hunter-gatherers on the plains of Africa. However, we are not sure if this specific kind of creature is a naturally evolving animal or something entirely different. What has been proven, however, is that the rake, specifically, is far from natural, as its primary form of sustenance appears to be fear itself. Sure, once in a while, they'll take down a wild animal, or a person may disappear in the woods never to be found. But it's not flesh and bone it craves. When it hungers, it'll make its presence known, whispering you in your sleep, or staring at you at the edge of your bed for hours on end, soaking in your horror. This is why we spread false or exaggerated stories, to make sure the public can get desensitized and not draw its attention, to starve monsters like these. After all, why be scared of a mere story? In the height of the Cold War, when tensions were nearing the breaking point between the US and USSR, and things were kept hush-hush between the two, it's always important to always know what the other country is planning. Project Stargate was started in 1978 under the United States Army, heavily researching the prospect of remote vision in the use of spying on the Russian government and the GRU. The idea was to use psychically attuned soldiers and intelligence agents to either psychically see events, sites, or information from a great distance, allowing for more near undetectable surveillance systems. Most of the experiments attempts to do this were, unsuccessful. This is why the project, almost in its entirety, was declassified in '95. However, there was a series of experiments that has yet to see the light of day. The Gateway experiments were an attempt to see if one can astrally project to become one invisible surveillance system. These experiments actually had very positive results at first. Participants managed to project into other rooms and even other buildings of the facility. Then the next big break was the invention of a complex neuroimaging implant that allows the recording of sights and sounds that the participant registers while projecting. The last experiment, however, was the one that caused the participants and Project Stargate as a whole to be canned. The idea was that depriving all the senses of a human can allow for a further range of astral projection. The plan was to first do the procedure surgically and later on develop a drug that has the same effects. The results were disastrous. After the sensory purging procedure, the subject started to begin hearing voices and seeing faces, despite not being able to hear and see. The voices soon became louder and louder, the faces clearer and visible. They were of dead family and friends screaming. The scientists found out the hard way that the bodily senses were the things that kept the mind tied to the bodies. If those senses were purged, then the mind would begin to fail, let's just say. After a few days of this torture, the patient's vital signs began to drop, and the recording system was capturing, I'm not quite sure, to be honest. At this point, the document started to look like barcode, but what is written is the subject's final words. Staring straight into the eyes of one of the scientists, he whispered, "I have spoken with God. He has abandoned us," before flatlining. The project was canned right after that. Most documents and equipment pertaining to this experiment were burned, including the body of the participant. However, the recording of the subject's final moments was strangely omitted from the burning and sent to the Vatican. I'll be honest, I really don't care to see what's on that tape if his final words are anything to go by. Children's television has always been a breeding ground for early trauma. What can be considered kid-friendly has never been clear. In 1973, syndicated on smaller or local television stations, a children's show called Candle Cove. A very simple kiddie show on the surface. A little girl deals with her day-to-day problems like, say, dealing with a mean girl or losing her favorite toy. Then she goes to a room and arranges various pirate-themed toys in her room to go on an imaginary adventure to see if she can solve her problems on her own. Each of these characters are based on one of the toys seen in the girl's room. A charming premise. Yes, in fact, I wouldn't mind showing this to my own kids, based on that alone. But we know, in this line of work, horrors lurk beneath the surface. It seems innocent enough. Strange editing choices in the show, unnerving designs, low-budget audio, and puppets. Ugh. But then, we get to the main villain of the show, the Skin Taker. A fairly detailed skeleton puppet. Dirty and stained with what is seemingly blood around his hands and mouth, donning a stitched-up cloak and hat made up of human skin. Strangely enough, there is no toy scene that represents this figure, possibly being a complete figment of the girl's imagination. The Skin Taker's main goal is to rip the skin off the little girl, creating a nice bow tie out of her flayed remains. This is where things get even stranger. We've not been able to track down almost anything about this show, though it has often been remembered and talked about in online forums. No home recordings, no channel schedules that have the air dates for the show, but whatever sparse documentation we have been able to recover has been less than helpful. It seems that this show never existed to begin with. If we didn't recover all tapes from the abandoned church, our best guess is that these were shown to the children that went to Sunday school there. Poor things, because one of the few intact tapes we have managed to find is one where all the characters and what sounds like the crew are screaming into the camera, with the little girl sobbing and whimpering. Photographs, since their invention, have long been thought to be able to copy or even steal your soul. Can the very grain of a picture contain a person's essence and being? If so, can digital photos have spirits intertwined in its very code? Entities can emerge from ones and zeros, sure, but can code replicate a person's will and memories? Can all code do this? In 2002, a cult that has been identified as the Moon Children abducted a young boy named Ben. We won't reveal his name to protect his family, of course. Ben was ritualistically killed when he was forcibly drowned in a pool on the cult's property. We don't know what they did to his body, but no trace of him has yet to be found. The ritual was an attempt to create a godlike being from Ben's spirit. However, it did not work. Fully, I mean. A side effect of the ritual was that the soul of the victim would be bound to an object, with which they would have a massive personal attachment with. In Ben's case, a video game cartridge. His soul, memories, and the sheer horror he felt in his last moments were meshed into the game code. His soul was trapped in that game for years until a young man bought the game from the boy's relative. There, the spirit of Ben was reawakened, cold, furious and confused, and finding out the ritual did in fact make him a god of sorts. A god of ones and zeros. One who can alter data with his will alone, and can wreak havoc with those who draw his ire. In the 1700s, there was a young man named Jack. He was a mischievous lad who liked to con and cheat to get what he wanted. One day, he decided to steal something from the local church, so he snuck out in the middle of the night to steal the gold cross from the altar and to sell it. However, when he was caught in the middle of the thievery, he was caught by the pastor of the church. So in a blind panic, Jack murdered the pastor with a rusty knife and dragged his body away to the church's graveyard. Jack found the perfect place to dump the body, a mausoleum. So Jack pushed open the door and dumped the pastor's body into the tomb. But when Jack went to exit the grave, the doors were mysteriously closed and locked from the outside. Young Jack screamed and banged on the door for hours, but the heavy stone and thick wood prevented any sounds from escaping the tomb. Jack tried everything, knocking down the door of his body, seeing if there was a window to climb out of, climbing to see if he could escape from the roof of the mausoleum, all to no avail. Hours turned to days. Jack was left in the pitch black with nothing but his thoughts, the body of the pastor, and the growing hunger. Years later, the police investigating the missing pastor finally had the permission to investigate the graves and mausoleums of the graveyard. When they opened the tomb, they only had a glimpse of something that looked like a mummified body, but it was moving and snarled like a wild animal. Almost instantly, they were all knocked to the side, meters from the door. Jack ran out into the woods that day, only leaving behind the body of a torn apart bloody skeleton. Jack was forsaken by both God and the devil, denied access from heaven or hell due to his crimes and doomed to walk the earth in eternal hunger. He now roams the forests and alleyways of cities, always on a hunt. He is no longer a man, near a mere animal of his own making, and he hunts like one. He waits till his victims are asleep at their most vulnerable, and in the middle of the night, he goes for the kill. We don't exactly know what happens. Most of the time, all that remains of the victims is their blood-stained bed and some viscera on the floor. But we have the testimony of a survivor. They claim that Jack was stalking them for days, and one night, Jack dragged them into the woods for another feast. But this individual managed to fight back and kick the mask off his face. And while Jack was distracted by this, the survivor ran off, but not completely intact. Jack seemed to have been eager that day because when the adrenaline wore off, the survivor found that their abdomen had been sliced open. Luckily, they managed to get some help, and a trip to the hospital managed to stitch them back up. But when the surgeon went to close the wound, they found that one of the victim's kidneys was ripped out. We're not the only ones in this game, we're just one of the many players. One of the big ones we call skippers. They like to hunt down weird stuff and contain them. The difference is that while we try to spread this information everywhere, they prefer to keep a more straightforward tactic of pure anonymity. Secrets wrapped up in secrets, they're so hush-hush in fact, that getting a hold of this document alone took so much f***ing paperwork you'd mistake it for a bloody dictionary. I had to get hold of my FBI and UIU buddies to get a hold of this one. A long while ago, this one leaked onto the internet apparently, but the picture attached to it was wrong. So I had to do some snooping on my own to see if I could get access to this one. SCP-173, or the statue, is a living statue that only moves when you look away from it. If it gets too close, it somehow snaps your neck. And this one is one of the more manageable objects of if the rumors are true. I'm not sure which rumors are real and which are just bullshit. Tales of sentient computer programs, a shadowy figure that can take you God knows where, a huge reptile that is near impossible to kill. Glad that they're dealing with this shit and we have to just chase ghost stories and legends. Going back to children's shows, the production of one is a grueling task. The stories alone would give any campfire tale a run for its money, especially when things go terribly, horribly wrong. During the production of a popular kids show named SpongeBob, a tape seemed to have gone missing for weeks. Now this caused the crew a great deal of stress due to it being the test screening for the first episode of the newest season, Thankfully, or so the crew thought, the tape was found in a storage room and shown to the test audience of interns and not children, thank God. The tape was heavily altered, with new lines and new animation, not done by anyone in the production. No storyboards of the altered scenes exist. None of the voice actors did any lines for the episode, with no recordings to prove their case. The new footage was highly disturbing to anyone who viewed the tape. I know you can get away with a lot in kids shows, but I don't think having one of the characters use a shotgun slug as a breath mint will pass any broadcasting standards. And that was the least gruesome part of what was shown. We are still investigating the tape this day, and the crew members or members who stole the tape and altered the footage have not been found. The tape has been locked up in the vaults of the archives with a do not air, release, copy or destroy order to prevent any leaks. Demons often take the form of innocent or harmless objects and people. There's a common saying in our field, don't trust the little girl. Demons love to trick people into trusting them before attacking. Over the years, Hunt has adapted to the emerging movie and television industry by taking the form of beloved cartoon characters. However, the forms they took on, they needed some work. Demons are not the best at replicating forms perfectly, so the avatars they manifested looked like horrifying chimeras of man and animal and less like a friendly mascot. And of course, with these new video games, these demons adapted thusly. This particular entity is actually one of the most successful disinformation campaigns that we have ever done. Fear of this entity has all but been eradicated, so manifestations have pretty much stopped. This demon, which we'll call EXE for simplicity's sake, was a digital entity who took the form of a video game mascot character. The medium he used was a simple CD-ROM disc with the words Sonic.exe written on it. When the file on the disc was played, it first appeared to be a game called Sonic the Hedgehog. But in reality, it was a psychological torture device. The entity manifests different characters from the game and... Sorry, but when I joined this task force 20 years ago, I expected killers, I expected fairy tales, I expected spirits. However, if you told me that I would have to read about a demonic entity that takes the form of a children's video game mascot character in a dry, clinical government format, I would have laughed in your face. Anyway, this demon attempts the usual and old routine, psychologically tortures you with disturbing images of torture, gore, death, all that, blah, blah, blah. Demons love to do that to crack open your mind and soul like an acorn. You've seen one demon, you've seen them all. Before the widespread conversion of analog to digital signals, any person could have potentially broadcast anything they wanted to by transmitting to channels not being used. Far better and mostly worse, these local and public access television channels had free reign to basically do whatever the fuck they wanted. Most of the time, it was just bizarre or amusing. Letting the public make their own shows can lead to unorthodox programming.
What kind of garbage is that? Oops, my anarchy symbol.
Of course, letting anyone showcase their content can allow for less than desirable things being aired. Rantings about religion, vulgar humour and violence. Between the years of 1997 and 1999, in the Peel region of Ontario, a local television station called Caledon Local 21 aired various kids shows that can only be picked up by older sets that have those old rabbit ear antennas. Mostly extremely low budget home recording programmings. One of them was reportedly just a can of soup and spoon chasing each other. However, our focus lies in a particular program, Mr. Bear's Cellar. Okay. How this did not draw attention immediately is beyond me. The program consisted of a man in a bear costume reading stories and playing with children that visited him. Now, you don't have to be a genius to realize how sketchily fucked up this is. And you'd be 100% right. The channel was apparently run by a Satanist. Not that surprising, considering one of the programs is literally him ranting about how we need to appease the devil himself. Again, how this flew past everyone in a post-satanic panic world is beyond my reasoning. The channel was a lure for children to do what we don't specifically know. But we do know that in 1999 there's a fire pit near the cabin that the channel broadcasted from, with 16 charred remains. The rule of thumb of most hunters is to go for the young, the elderly, and the sick. Humans are no exception to this. Children are the prime target for hostile spiritual predators. Demonic or other unpleasant spirits love to feed off the fear of kids. For the most part, this is why, throughout history, we have had a lot of kids' stories rooted in horror. We want them to be as desensitized as possible, and aware of what can get them in the dead of night. If you know about how an entity hunts, then you know how to avoid it for the most part. Now, this little imp bastard of this segment is commonly known as Mr. Widemouth. He takes the appearance of a small mammal-like creature. He has elements of cats, dogs, rabbits. I don't know. I think it looks like a rat to me. Mr. Widemouth is a rather bothersome little menace. He likes to lure kids out into a false sense of safety and friendship by playing games with them. These games start off very innocent, but they slowly but surely become more and more dangerous. Things like playing on the roof, on a busy road, with knives, to give some examples. I'm not entirely sure why he wants kids dead or injured, but what I do know is that if I see my kids ever play with this rat bastard, I'm punting their little shit into the stratosphere. Sometimes a nasty developer really just hates the management and wants the company to burn. And sometimes I don't blame them. Mr. Mix's Typing Kitchen is a perfect example of a developer sabotaging a project. But the method of sabotage was, I'd say, unnecessary. Games carrying nasty spirits is nothing new. But games carrying hexes and curses, now that's something. Someone must have pissed in their coffee or they were refused overtime. I don't know what spurs someone to place a damn curse into a children's game. The game became corrupted a few weeks after it was released. Every copy now has an impossible 5th level. I call it a warning. A group of hackers bypassed the 4th level using some cheating software. What they found in the 6th level horrified them. Reports of disturbing crime scene photos not taken by the police, mind you. And of course, of a cooking-based game with dead bodies and organs, I feel I should not elaborate on what the gameplay consisted of. The curse was not done. When the contents of the 6th level were viewed, it caused massive mental disturbance. Most of the hackers vanished off the face of the earth, their fate's mere speculation. One of them tried to lure a kid from a grocery store. He was dressed in a tattered chef's outfit and hat. With a dead look on his face, the only thing he said to the police was, "I'm Mr. Mix." Shh. Who the hell would curse a children's education video game? I mean, what the hell? Huge companies have the ability to sweep a lot of things under the rug when they have resources. Most billion-dollar corporations are built on the sweat, tears, and sometimes literal blood and viscera of countless workers. Disney's no exception. In fact, they are an example. Their theme parks have hundreds of accidents and deaths on their grounds. In fact, there's an old rule to where if a mascot wearer drops dead, for another mascot to prop them up on a bench until a dry cleaner comes and picks the costume up. Back in the 90s, this exact same thing happened on the new island theme park called Mowgli's Palace. A mascot worker in a Mickey Mouse suit died of, well, we can only speculate, I guess, a heat stroke due to being summer and wearing a thick suit. The body was carted off to the costume preparations room. For some reason or another, the park was completely abandoned. Whether it was due to the death and the following entity, I'm not quite sure. What I do know is that the body was left in a mascot suit, rotting, liquefying in the years that followed. The suit became corrupted, now being a photonegative version of itself. The reason why this happened, hell if I know. But the results speak for themselves. A suit that has been melded with flesh, creating an abomination. The body inside has been decomposed to the point that the remains are a thick, chunky yellow substance. Elder sister vomits blood, younger sister's breathing fire, while sweet little Tomino just spits up the jewels. All alone does Tomino go falling into that hell, a hell of utter darkness, without even flowers. Is Tomino's big sister the one who whips him? The purpose of the scrounging hangs dark in his mind. Lashing and thrashing him, but never quite shattering. One sure path to Avishi, the eternal hell. Into that blackest of hells guide him now, I pray. To the golden sheep, to the nightingale. How much did he put in the leather pouch to prepare for his trek to eternal hell? Spring is coming to the valley, to the woods, to the spiraling chasms of the blackest hell. The nightingale in her cage, the sheep aboard the wagon, and tears well up in the eyes of sweet little Tomino. Sing, O nightingale, in the vast misty forest. He screams he only misses his little sister. His wailing desperation echoes throughout hell. A fox peony opens its golden petals. Down past the 7 mountains and 7 rivers of hell, the solitary journey of sweet little Tomino. If in this hell they'll be found, may they then come to me, please. Those sharp spikes of punishment from Needle Mountain. Not just on some empty whim is flesh pierced with blood-red pins. They serve as hellish signposts for sweet little Tomino. That was the cursed poem Tomino's Hell, originated in 1919 Japan by Sahio Yaso. The poem is said to cause terrible misfortunes or even death to those who read it out loud. Wait. Oh, God damn it. Well, I'm sure I'll be fine. By reading the poem in English, I'm sure that the curse won't happen. I think. Sleep is vital to the body. It's how our body and mind heal. We talked about how a lack of sleep for a prolonged period of time can lead to various mental disturbances that that can lead the person into a dark place. But a person uses a third of their life sleeping. All that time not being used. What if there was a medicine that can stop you from sleeping? Well, in 2014, a man named Reed Murdoch was given access to a website called Necrosleep, a very suspicious site, even to me who doesn't even use the internet. It claimed that with 1 pill a day, you could never have the need to sleep again. All you have to do is take some weird, unknown, not FCC approved pills from a sketch as fuck website that looks like it has not been updated since 1999. Who could refuse such an offer? Well, Mr. Murdoch didn't, even when he had reservations about Necrosleep. He tried the damn pills. He was fine for a few days and nights. The pills did remove his need for sleep. However, over the span of 20 days, Reed's mental condition was severely deteriorating. To the point that he started to have vivid visual and auditory hallucinations. He began to develop what seemed to be paranoid schizophrenia, no longer trusting even his real-life friends. Everything came to a head on the 26th and 27th, when Reed killed his cat, ate it, then proceeded to his parents' house and mauled his father to death like an animal, tearing him apart and consuming their remains. Reed was shot to death by police. During his autopsy, small worm-like organisms were found feeding off his grey matter, and the pills contained what looked like eggs for the worms. During the investigation, a search for the website Necrosleep commenced. As of today, no evidence of Necrosleep even existing has been found, and the case remains cold to this day. What the hell is going on? The solar plexus clown glider is a collective name of a corrupted and nasty digital entity that will attack the mental state of those who interact with it. Much like most entities of its type, it got its initial spread via chain letters in the 90s, stating that those who view the image associated with it and read its name, they become very susceptible to outside corrupting forces. The picture was different last time I saw it. Why is it? Oh no. Next file. Next file? Change the fucking file. I don't know what's going on anymore. I think I've been compromised somehow, or this line of work is finally getting to me. I don't know anymore. I need to wrap this up fast so I can defog whatever's going on. Anyway, well, it's no shock that humans have the capability to become monsters when our minds are pushed beyond their breaking point. In the 40s, the Soviets wanted to find an answer to the Germans' miracle Superman pill that allowed their soldiers to stay awake for days on end. This drug was meth, in case you didn't know. The Soviets got to work in creating an inhaled stimulant that shut off their brain's melatonin receptors, so the patients did not feel the need to sleep. This worked out well for 5 days. But then the mental state of the patients, of course, quickly rotted like an old apple. The patients began mutilating themselves, tearing at each other, then covering the experiment view window with magazine pages smeared with their own blood and fecal matter. The experiment was halted to clean out the experiment room, taking the subjects out into fresh air. They found the subjects completely deranged and brutalized beyond what is capable of living, half their organs hanging out their body. And when one of them fell asleep, all his vital signs stopped. After one of the scientists decided to put a halt to the experiment himself, he asked one of the subjects what he was. The subject responded thusly, "Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate to silence and paralysis when you go into that nocturnal heaven where we cannot tread." Begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate to silence and paralysis when you go into that nocturnal heaven where we cannot tread. The walls of reality are crumbling, and all I see are the eyes watching back. I can see the screams of the enlightened and the damned. I'm not a man of God, but I know there's a dark and evil place beyond the stars and time. And if there's a word for it, it will be hell. And hell is very much real. I should know. I helped build the Devil's Cage. I have seen things that will make the eyes of man bleed and the hearts of the wicked quake. Beings who can and will tear the very structure of reality itself. Dark and corrupted gods who see humanity as nothing more than as an insect. Humanity has known these gods for millennia. Scribings of long-lost ancient tomes tell of horrifying abominations that can drive a man insane just by looking upon it. He who waits behind the wall, the very definition and embodiment of corruption and insanity. The dark star whose light is shadow, and when he shines, mankind will learn all kinds of fear, and when he returns, his birth cry shall be the screams of mankind. and the rotting stars. He comes! No, wait. No, oh, shit. What am I? Where am I? Oh, shit. Wait. No. Cut the broadcast. Cut the fucking